Disclaimer, some of these stories are not exactly family friendly, especially not very child friendly. Some of them do use some strong language. Some of them do talk about some rather vile things sometimes. Others is just not exactly something some people might want their children or anyone else around them to hear. Not exactly public friendly. If you have a job in general, you know what I'm talking about. Some things that happen in life are just not public, perfect conversation. So, with that in mind, please keep in mind where you are listening to this, who you're listening to it around, and how you're going to listen to it. Also, if you have any stories that you would like to share with me, please send them my way. I am always up for more stories. I only have so much as my own. So, if you have anything you want to share with me, please feel free to share them with me in my email account. Send them to workwithalphag@gmail.com. That is workwithalphag@gmail.com. One last thing I wanted to remind you all about is please make sure you're following me. I am not just on one platform. I am on Spotify, Patreon, Castbox, Podbean, and Buzzsprout. So please, if you have any of those, Patreon is probably going to help me out the best. And hopefully later on, it'll be able to help you guys out as well. For $1 a month, you'll be getting ad-free episodes, as well as later on, I'm hoping to be able to do Q&As, just be able to talk with you guys, one-on-one conversations, group chats, whatever. So please, make sure you're checking it all out. Let's get into the episode. Hey everybody, welcome to Stories from Behind the Counter. I am your host, Alpha. This is the podcast where we go over stories where if you have any kind of customer-facing, patient-facing, heck, even if you work in detention or, EMT, police, retail, pretty much if you're dealing with the public, this is the podcast for you. We talk about stories of everyday things that we deal with. These are usually the things that, unless someone has worked in our line of work, they probably won't understand exactly what we deal with and what we go through almost every day. So buckle up for some interesting stories, some of them possibly very grotesque, some of them hopefully just straight out funny and entertaining enough for you to like this. This story is actually from a personal friend of mine. I'm going to refer to her as JS. While working at a very well-known store that we all frequent, remember folks, I don't mention any company names or real names. JS starts her story by saying, you would expect to have customers to get the hint that no means no at your job. Whether that's someone flirting with you or refusing some sort of customer service, we've all had to deal with something like that. Sometimes you just have to tell somebody no, and they don't like it. Unfortunately, in this case, this gentleman did not want to take no for an answer. So one day, JS comes into work and she says that she experienced harassment, quote, to the max, end quote. I opened the complaint list and I saw an interesting complaint on myself. A customer came through my line at work, regularly flirting with me for probably about a year. Every time I kindly tried to tell the customer, no thank you, I'm married, or something along those lines, he would usually lose his mind. He finally had enough of me rejecting him, and he wrote a complaint for my whole company to see, as our complaint board is a public domain to anyone in the company. Now that this complaint has been put through and seen by pretty much everyone, the local police department have to come in and check to make sure that the individual here is not harassing me anymore. It became so embarrassing that I ended up actually quitting due to the embarrassment. This is the actual posted complaint from the customer. Disclaimer: I am still changing certain information on this complaint in order to not say locations or company names or any real names as to protect my sources as well as anyone else involved. Here we go. It says, quote, I am a local And when I go to the lottery center, I always come to a specific person. I decided to ask them out, and they told me no. I have asked them many times, and they keep saying no. No, thank you, and so on and so forth. If they keep rejecting me, I'll have to purchase my lottery somewhere else. All I want to do is take them out, and they won't let me. They need better customer service. End quote. All right, this is me speaking as Alpha myself. Are you freaking kidding me? He actually thought that complaint would help his cause? Some people are just ridiculous. I honestly have no words for someone so oblivious to the fact that when someone says no, they have their reasons. And a complaint like this to a company is not going to help your pathetic ass get a date. This prompts exactly what happened. Police get involved depending on how far you take things. You get arrested or get a restraining order on you or something, maybe 86 from the company. People just really never cease to amaze me. They really don't. They don't think or anything. And it's amazing how often you come across stuff like this in your everyday when you work in retail or just dealing with the public in general. All right, so this next story is one of my own experience with me and another coworker. I still talk to them to this day, and we still laugh about this incident because it's just one of those things you can't make up. So one day, I'm a department manager at a specific company. It had been a nice, quiet day. It was close to the end of my shift. Suddenly, the fitting room is calling for help from management. A female co-manager had responded, so I just kind of ignored it, went about cleaning up my mess and getting ready to leave for the day. Next thing I know, that same co-manager is calling for any available male member of management. She definitely put an emphasis on male, and she needed them there ASAP. I will say she sounded slightly off compared to how she usually talks over the radio. So the fact that this manager didn't sound very confident, it kind of scared me. She almost sounded scared. But it was time for me to leave, and there were multiple people in upper management that were males and on shift that should be able to handle this, right? Well, I start heading toward the time clock, and I hear the radio again. Same co-managers asking for the same thing. I said, oh, I'll just do it, whatever. So I responded over the radio, I'll be right there. Where are you so I can figure out what's going on? She said she was up front, behind the fitting rooms, away from the customer. So I headed there immediately. By the time I got to this manager, she looked pale as a sheet. Granted, she always looked rather pale, but she was paler than usual. I asked what was going on, and she couldn't even answer. My other coworker that I still talk to was next to the co-manager, and she responded for her. She said, there's an older gentleman in the fitting room that needs some help getting dressed. Well, my parents are former military. I've been in the Boy Scouts. My sisters are in the medical field. This isn't really anything that I haven't dealt with before. I felt bad for the guy. If he's elderly, maybe his hands are too shaky or something. Maybe something happened. At least he's not walking around half dressed. You know what I mean? So I agreed to go and help the gentleman. At this time, I want to point out that I just cut my hair pretty short to be more quote-unquote boyish, because I had it pretty long, a little bit past my shoulders. So a lot of people used to confuse me for a woman, especially with how skinny I am. From behind, I just looked like a girl, apparently. But I had cut it, and I'm trying to look a little more manly at this time, so people can quit calling me ma'am or miss or whatever. Well, I knocked on the door to the fitting room that the gentleman was in, and he answered with the customary, come in. So I opened up the door. Before I could get anything out, say anything, ask any questions, the old man looks up at me, and as my coworker is still behind the door, so he doesn't see her, he goes, oh, you're pretty. My coworker immediately had to cover her mouth and leave so that she wouldn't laugh too hard, too close to the situation, and inflame things. I tried to ignore the comment, and I asked, I hear you're having some trouble, correct? The old man continues to explain that he just recently had a stroke. He was trying some clothes on, but when he got his old clothes back on, he had trouble zipping up the jeans because the left side was currently 100% dead. So I said, I understand, sir, not a problem. Let's get you on your way. So I zipped up the poor guy's jeans. I helped him out and got him out of the fitting room and on his way. At this time, I look out where I met my co-manager and my co-worker, and they're still there. My co-worker is so red-faced, she looked like a tomato. My co-manager, on the other hand, was even more pale than when I left her. I didn't think that was possible. I'm assuming at this point my coworker had explained what had happened as soon as she had run back. She ran away from the situation, probably just had to get it off her chest. It was too hilarious to her. I start walking toward them, and my co-manager goes, I am so sorry. I owe you a lunch. I promise it's not going to be McDonald's or anything cheap. I owe you a good lunch. So I responded with, I'll hold you to that one. I have no problem helping anybody out, especially the elderly, but I was not prepared to be called pretty by an elderly man in the fitting room stall today. By the way, I never got that lunch. If I remember right, the co-manager left about a month later, and I never heard from them again. For a while, certain people who heard about the incident called me pretty, or department manager pretty, over the radio. Alright, this next story is another personal one. This is when I worked for, shall we just say, a hardware company. So I'm a manager on the front end at this one place, and an elderly gentleman comes up to me. He's hobbling on his cane, and his arm is bleeding. So I ask him, Sir, are you okay? What happened? To which he responded with, I was hit by my own truck. I said, I'm sorry, what? And the elderly gentleman repeated that he had been hit by his own truck. When I asked him to explain what happened further, because that's obviously very vague information, he told me that his truck had been stolen about a week beforehand. He had found it here in the store's parking lot, and as the thief was trying to get into the already stolen truck, he decided to go and confront the thief. Obviously, that's what you do when you're 60 plus years old, hobbling on a cane, but hey, fuck it, you're a Vietnam vet, right? Now, the thief of the truck was already back in the truck by the time the old man got to him. Apparently, some words were exchanged, and the man in the truck proceeded to back out and hit the old man, who again owned this truck, with the side of the mirror, causing a big old gash in his arm, and obviously that's where all the blood was coming from. Mind you, the old man was on blood thinners, and he wouldn't stop bleeding no matter what we did, because that's what blood thinners do, for anyone who doesn't know. So, of course, we ended up calling the police. We reported the incident while we're trying to tend to the old man and, make sure his injuries are okay. We're waiting on the police, asking if he wants an ambulance. He said no. The thief of the truck then proceeds to pull up next to the door where we're talking to the old man, and we're tending to his injuries. The man in the truck decides this is perfect time to come up and just start yelling at the old man who owns the truck. Now, he refuses to get out of the car. Another woman, it looked like she was maybe in her 40s, is in the passenger seat of this truck. They both refuse to get out, but they have no problem sparking some sort of fight with this old man, trying to make him look like the bad guy. So, as the two parties are yelling at each other, the old man is just about ready to jam his cane through the window to hit the guy in the truck. The police finally pull up to the scene. At this point, I just kind of pointed at the truck. The officer looked at the truck, and he apparently recognized these two that were inside of the truck. Apparently, he'd been dealing with the theft of the truck already, and he recognized these two from previous crimes. So the officer immediately put his hand on his taser, which was placed on his chest, and he just immediately yelled out, "Oh, fuck no, I am not dealing with you two today. Get out of the fucking truck now." At this point, I was already about 30 minutes late clocking out, so I checked with the cops. I said, "Do you need anything from me?" When they said no, I just called it a day and I left. Alright, so this next story was a very interesting one. I was out on break one day. I'm out at what we called the Smoker Shack. It's on the side of the building, pretty much away from most everyone and everything. There is an intersection right next to our Smoker Shack, though, for the parking lot. Well, I'm sitting there, I'm smoking a cigarette, I'm eating a snack. All of a sudden, the police cruiser comes up. He stops at the stop sign, just like everyone else. And, that didn't seem strange. But when the cop pulled forward a little bit and stopped in the dead center of the intersection, in other words, trying to like block it off, make sure no one could get through one way or another, he just put it in park and bolted out of his vehicle. Of course, at this time, I stand up to see what's going on. I'm very curious. That's not an average thing. I hear the cops start yelling as he's chasing this guy through the parking lot, and our parking lot runs into another store's parking lot. So I see the cop running in there, and the cop yells, "Stop! Don't make me chase you! Don't make me chase you!" As he was closing the distance, quite quickly, I might add, for how big the cop was, the cop finally catches up to the suspect he's chasing, and he just tackles him straight to the ground. I want to say they were probably about 50 yards away from me. The suspect, of course, tried to get away from the cop after being tackled, so the cop starts yelling, "Stop resisting! Stop resisting!" before he finally had enough of the guy and he kneed him twice in the ribs. And man, I tell you, I've been in martial arts for about 15 years now. This cop was a pretty big boy. The suspect was not such a big boy, but he threw those knees with lightning speed into this little guy, and all I hear is whack, whack. I I hurt for that guy, okay? The suspect, even I was sitting there like, please, man, just stop. Just stop. This is making my ribs hurt hearing this. Luckily enough, after a little bit of struggling with the cop and taking those knees, he did eventually get the point. The cop wasn't messing around. I'm sure after those hits to the rib, he just kind of said, "Screw this, I'm done," and he gave up. I never found out exactly what happened to make the cop tackle the guy. I don't know like what he stole or what he did in general, but it's honestly just another regular thing in retail. All right, here's another one. This was another interesting one from when I was working overnights. I got in. I still had about 30 minutes before I had to go to work, so I sat outside, got some food in my stomach, had a couple cigarettes, whatever. As I'm sitting on the bench outside, I'm enjoying the time before my shift. Some guy just bolts right past me, almost trips over my feet, which I thought was kind of funny. So, of course, I tried to move my feet. I didn't know what was going on. Maybe he had an emergency at home. You can never really jump to conclusions. But before I could even think that way, of course, AP runs right past me. Apparently, the guy had stolen from my work and he was trying to get away from the asset protection. So, of course, them chasing him, the guy was kind of smart. He ran up this little hill that ran into another store's parking lot. APLP for most companies cannot go off of their company's property, even in pursuit like this. So the guy was pretty smart. He was like, "Hey, I got this. I'm going to lose him." I'm sitting there. I'm watching the suspect in the next parking lot over run back and forth. My AP guy is sitting there in our parking lot, kind of mirroring him. Every time the guy would run left, he would run left with him. Every time the guy would run right, he'd run right with him. He's standing on the edge of the parking lot on the phone with the cops and just kind of giving them a play by play while trying to mirror this guy so he can't get away too far. So the suspect runs all the way to the left. He's trying to run to the edge of this shopping plaza in this next parking lot over. As he's running, he just randomly about face starts running the other way. I'm trying to see what's going on. I can't really see. I'm trying not to get in the middle of it, but I'm curious enough. I am rubbernecking where I'm trying to see as much as possible. Turns out they sent one police unit on each side of the building trying to trap him in. So as he's running to one edge of this plaza, he notices there's a car coming around the corner for him, so that's what made him about face. He's running all the way back. He realizes there's another cop car right there. So he starts running back the other way he just came, where there was another cop car. Yeah, he didn't realize he boxed himself in pretty damn good. At this point, he's only got a couple of real options. Three in my eyes. He can try and run back down, see if he can outrun my AP guy, and hope to whatever gods he believes in that the cops don't feel like using their 4x4 SUVs. Or two, he can try and run away and like try and make the cops hit each other. Hope he can give himself some time to run even further. But ultimately, he decided option three was going to be the best. He just ended up giving up. He had stolen a $10 belt and a $5 DVD. Caused all this trouble, pissed off AP, pissed off the cops. I really don't think it ended up being worth it for him. All right, guys, couple more stories here. Trying to keep these to half-hour episodes while trying to get in as many stories as possible. So just a couple more for you. This one was one of my favorite ones. This actually comes from my sister when she worked at a specific retail place that we all love to go and shop at. I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about. So she's out on break one day. She's out at what we called the Smoker Shack. Same one I was describing in the previous story here. And some lady who was about my sister's age, late 20s, early 30s, around this time, I believe. She walked over to the table. She's wearing a very nice, beautiful suit skirt. Looks like she was going for an interview, or she already held a decent job, or, something was going on. She looked beautiful. Well, this lady comes up and she just slams down a giant bottle of vodka. She looked straight at my sister, and she was very intoxicated at this state already, and slurred out, my sister was like, wait, what? What's going on? So the lady tried to speak up a little more clearly and went, I just stole this, with her hand on the bottle of vodka. My sister just kind of looked at her coworker and looked at the lady in the suit skirt, and she tried to be nice, was like, oh, okay, well, don't worry, honey. We have registers right around the corner inside here. We can get you checked out in no time. No big deal. But she was mostly just kind of hoping she could coax this customer inside, get better reception on her radio so she can call for upper management. Out at the Smoker Shack, trying to call for help for anything over those radios was like trying to send smoke signals inside of a storage unit. It was not going to work very well. Well, the lady that had stolen the bottle of vodka apparently was not going to fall for it. She was just like, nope, I'm going to go to jail. I'm going to go to jail. She just cracks this bad boy open, starts guzzling it like it's water. Obviously, my sister's trying to get a hold of management while trying to make sure drunk lady doesn't do anything else crazy. So she's trying to quietly call over the radio, which, mind you, like I just said, does not have that good a service. So no one's hearing her. Well, they're trying to get her to calm down, stop drinking what she's already drank. And while they're trying to deal with that and call for help as it is, there's a car accident right there at the intersection, right next to the Smoker Shack. Of course, right? When it rains, it pours. My sister is actually a trained nurse. She had been in the medical field as long as I can remember, to be perfectly honest. It seems like ever since she got out of school. So her natural instincts kick in. She goes, checks on the people in the car accident. And while she's trying to deal with the people in the car accident, drunk lady decides to try and hop into the vehicle and steal one of the vehicles that was just in a car accident. Obviously, the person who owned whichever vehicle she hopped into was not happy. A, she just got into a car accident. B, now there's some drunk lady trying to steal her car. What is going on here? So my sister's trying to get the drunk lady out of the car, trying to make sure these people don't fight the drunk lady or each other. And she's calling for help all across the radio the entire time. Finally, somebody hears her because she's just got one of those lucky moments in time where she actually went over the radio and one of the automotive managers came out, broke everything up, helped call the cops. I don't know 100% exactly what happened after that at that point. This was quite a good few years ago, but this is one of those stories you definitely could not make up if you tried. All right, another quick little story. Speaking of the automotive manager, the same automotive manager that helped my sister in this last situation, told me about a very funny moment which we all wish we could do, and sometimes we honestly just cannot help but do it. My manager was dealing with a pallet of freight. He was trying to get it knocked out real fast, trying to stock the area. This guy comes up and he's just very annoyed at something already, obviously. So he looks up at the aisle where my manager's in. He walks straight up to the ASM and he yells at him very aggressively, "Where the fuck are your windshield wipers?" Well, the ASM literally just kind of blinked at the customer, looked behind where he was, where the windshield wipers were, and he pointed at them, saying flatly, "Right here." Before he got to move, say anything, do anything, the customer looks at the wipers, looks at the ASM again, and yells, "Well, how the fuck do you read this book?" The ASM said he couldn't help himself at this point, since the guy walked up to him, already being a jerk, being super aggressive, yelling, screaming, cussing, all that. My ASM walked him over to the book, looked at him, and just like this, he goes, "You start at the top of the page, down, left to right, one word at a time." And he just walked away. Now, this is the kind of thing that really annoys almost everyone in retail. We understand that not everyone is a professional in every aspect of life. But when you come up to us and immediately start demanding things, yelling at us, expecting us to essentially be your slave and read your mind to fix your problems, we're more than likely just going to match your energy, especially these days, because there has been a huge issue with a little thing called respect. As retail workers, we are humans. We are workers, and we have our own issues. We have our own lives. And you don't know what we may be going through either. That is part of our training that we need to keep in mind. We don't know what you guys are going through as customers. We understand that. We understand that we do have to deal with certain things to a point. But when it comes to flat out, someone's not just having a bad day. They want us to do everything for them, and they want to flex their power over people. That's what we have a hard time with. We'll try our hardest through most of the negative stuff and the stupidity from other people, but sometimes if someone wants to go out of their way to be that much of a jerk, we will match your energy. Well, on that note, I think we're going to go ahead and call this very first episode done. Thanks again for listening, guys. Obviously, I try to keep everyone's identities safe so that they can be protected, so there's no backlash from any of these companies or anyone else for any reason whatsoever. So for everyone sending in their stories, I thank you. Whatever I call you on the show is all you will ever be known as. With that being said, I want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to Denise Esparza for the artwork. She's the one who did the little thumbnail that you see when I upload all of my episodes, and I do look forward to working with her for any changes in artwork that I decide to do later. If you're interested in seeing anything else and more artwork that she does, you can follow her on Nisi Art on Instagram. That's NEISSE_ART on Instagram. Also, big shout out and a thank you to Nivation. He's the one responsible for the music you hear at the beginning and the ending of the episodes. If you wish to follow him and see what else he provides musically, that is Nivation. Spotify is the only platform that he gave me to shout him out on, but I just wanted to make sure he got the credit for what he did for me. I really do appreciate everything you guys have done for me to help me get this show started and to keep it going. Thank you guys. I really honestly could not have done this without you. This is Alpha signing off. See you next episode.